I mean video. She said, but I am not
You'll just know and then kick them out
Right.
It's Tazki
quietly.
anyways. You need to do, Sheikh. It's Tazki.
Allahu
Adib
Akbar.
al-Nafs.
Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. طيب بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. So inshallah today we are going to talk about chapter 4. Did you guys get the slides?
Yes.
Okay, good. So in this chapter, basically what Ghazali is talking about, he's talking about the difference between animals and humans. And how does he actually talk about, or what does he say is the main difference between animals and humans? Like what differentiates us from other creation or other beings?
Special characteristics.
Okay, like what? There's one in particular that he talks about in this chapter that he feels is actually differentiates us.
Was it fitra?
Fitra was something he mentions in the beginning of the book, in the beginning of this in the beginning of this section. There's no doubt about that. But in this chapter specifically, he talks about something.
I think it's the heart that leads to knowledge and will.
Jayid, right? So he says that the actual thing that leads us to that is what? You guys know? You guys are all you're all close.
Intellect.
The intellect, and he says specifically reason, right? So reason is something that we like it's translated from like mantiq, and that it is actually reason that allows us that differentiates us between between us and animals. What is reason? What does it mean? What is he talking about? And remember, I think it's very important, obviously, to keep in mind the time period that also Ghazali was in. I'm not saying he's wrong, but I'm saying that this is something that is he's saying that this is something that is unique to mankind. And I think it's very important for us to understand, okay, where did he get this concept from?
So you said, where did he get the concept from?
Yes.
The Aristotelian logic.
Ahsant, right? So this is all Hellenistic thought, right? This idea that mantiq, or the idea that reason is something that that differentiates us between us and animals. I think it is something. I'm not saying it's wrong. I think it is very important to understand that it is something that differentiates us for sure. This ability to actually reason. But what does it mean to reason?
I think it's like to question or to kind of experiment.
Like this ability to experiment and the ability to draw conclusions. Now, saying that, are animals able to draw conclusions? Right, there is a sense of reason within animals too. So it can't be that Ghazali is not talking about that, because obviously he observed animals, and the Greeks also observed animals. What reason is he talking about then?
The ability to overcome your shahwa.
Okay.
Or no?
Possibly, maybe, because can it be the ability to control those three animalistic characteristics? I think so. In using logic and reason to define that and determine that, I think that's very reasonable. What else?
Well, I don't know if it's the same thing, but basically he said, it's very natural for us if we just follow our desire or whatnot. We may want to do one thing, but then when we have knowledge of something or experience, or we've reflected upon it over time, we might hold back our desires for for the better, right? Because out of experience, we know that our desire to do something, in the short, it may be short-term base, and it's based on our knowledge, we know something better is out there.
Mashallah. Well, I think it's very good. It's very close to what Uthman said, in the sense that it is reason is the ability to basically contain those three. I'm sorry. Somebody was going to say something. Did somebody have a comment? I thought I heard somebody say something. No. Okay. So basically, this idea or this reason is it's not just the ability to draw conclusions, right? We said that this is something that we find even in animals, right? They can draw conclusions, but the ability to actually put our shahwa, to put our desires, to put our anger, and even to deal with the sense perception that we have in a way that allows us to draw conclusions on the world around us and the world that's outside. And animals are much easier to trick, right? So this is why it's much easier to trap an animal. This is why you don't have animals developing kingdoms, right? Like mankind does. This ability to draw conclusions and perception of the outside world in order to bring this difference about. And again, this is something that's very important to keep in mind in the Hellenistic frame, that the Greeks are said that, okay, it is logic and reason that actually differentiates us. And when they talk about logic and when they talk about reasons, they talk about the ability to draw conclusions from receiving two separate pieces of information. Versus an animal might get just one or two pieces of information in order to, and the reason that it has is only to further its appetence, to further its anger, and to further its sense perception. For us, for humans, many times that ability to want to draw nearer to the divine, that is something that is very different. That's not something that you're going to find with animals. Also, in that, when the Greeks talk about reason, many times they're actually using it to help them define what is divine, right? So when they use reason, it's to help them define how do I determine what a divinity is? How do I determine what a god is? How do I determine what this being is? So it is something that's really important that Ghazali, he spends a lot of time on, again, because there was a lot of Greek translations that were coming in. Not to say that any of it is wrong. I think a lot of it is, they're very good arguments and they're very good decisions. They're very good discussions to have. So he talks about the two types of knowledge. He talks that which is acquired through reason and instruction, and that which is acquired through revelation and unveiling. What do you guys think about this? And what is he talking about?
The first is quite the reason and instruction. No, let me relation and unveiling. No, let me begin with the second one. So he brought the example of prophets as someone who hold revealed knowledge, meaning Allah giving to prophets knowledge that an ordinary man cannot obtain
Mhm.
just by reasoning. So that's and so to the contrast to that is the first one is something is general knowledge a man can acquire
Okay.
by reasoning.
So what would be a good way to summarize these? If I talked about the first type of knowledge,
Is
Eh. Worldly.
yeah, kind of, yeah. The first
Okay.
one is maybe worldly, and the other one is about the world to come.
Okay. All right, that's good. I like that. So this can be acquired through experimentation, right?
Yeah,
And this can only come
through the divine. Yeah,
through the divine. Good. And you said that one difference. Actually, you know what? Why don't we put this here? And this is worldly knowledge. We said that this can only come from the divine. Or something that you can get through the five senses. Okay, if you're talking about a worldly, like experimentation. So experimentation is something that is solely relies on the five senses. There's, I think that falls in line with that. Is there anything else here that we want to add here? So when we talk about knowledge of the Sharia, if I talk about fiqh, if I talk about hadith, if I talk about grammar, I talk about tafsir, where does that fall in these two?
It could
Uh,
look. Go ahead, Asma.
I think if you put grammar threw me off, but the rest can be it can be both, Sheikh, from al-jiha mufakka yani.
Okay, but
Yeah.
I'm saying here, the Quran and the Sunnah, where would those fall?
Yeah, revelation.
They would fall into revelation.
Yeah.
And the sciences that come from them, are those revealed? Did Allah say you will study
Reason.
aqidah and you will study fiqh and you will study hadith?
No.
Right. Those are all man-made sciences,
Sorry.
and they're all extrapolated from the Quran and the Sunnah. So does that help categorize it a little bit better?
No.
So here, is Ghazali putting either of these down? Is he saying that you can do without one?
No.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
And this is a misconception that many people take when they talk about Ghazali, because they think that he's spending so much time on this one, because he calls this experiential knowledge, which we've defined and we've talked about and we'll revisit inshallah, versus perceived knowledge. And we talked a little bit about this. What is the difference between the two?
Perceived knowledge would be acquired, as Hammam mentioned, through our senses.
Okay.
That what we can see, but in ilm al-ghaib we cannot see. It's the unseen realm. This is why it falls into the other category.
Okay, you're right. There, I just want to push back a little bit on that. So the things that are acquired by the five senses, I would say that that's experiential, right? That's experimentational, right?
Yeah.
That's through experiment. But you have a lot of theoretical sciences, like for example, tafsir, right? What five senses am I using there?
Your memory, your intellect, your reasoning.
Right. So remember Ghazali, he talks about this earlier. He talked about the armies, right?
Yeah.
So this is actually acquired through the external, anything that is used by the external armies or the internal armies, right? What about revelation? How is this acquired?
Revelation is acquired through maybe through a prophet.
Okay, that's one. But I'm saying for us, we're not talking prophets. They're chosen, correct?
Yeah.
Like for example, can any of us work to a point so that we can become a prophet? Is there any work we can do, or any kind of action we can do to become prophets?
No, this is gifted. Maybe it's chosen.
Right. This is chosen. You are gifted. Right. You're gifted to become that. But is there a type of divine knowledge that can reach us?
Yes. Through higher spirituality, then you can have some unveiling.
Jayed, right? So he talks very, very clearly about this. He said that, okay, there is an unveiling that happens. And we had talked about examples of that, and we said that there are many times that there are certain adhkar, there are certain types of remembrances we make, and we could have made them thousands of times in our life. But there comes a point in our life where we truly understand it because of a particular experience, because something happened, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just chose that moment to open our hearts to help us understand it. And many times the same things applies to certain verses. Many times there are things that happen in our life, or there are things that are to happen, and Allah gives us insight on either avoiding it or doing it. And all of that comes through not using either of these armies, right? There's nothing that an individual can actually do, right? There's no common sense, there's no insight, there's no thinking that a person can do to actually acquire this. So this is something like you pointed out, this is essentially a gift. This is essentially a gift. But there are only certain types of people who are given this gift. Who receives this gift?
First is prophets in the hierarchy that he put.
Absolutely. Prophets are number one. There's no doubt about that.
I guess someone who seeks knowledge and because in a sense, based on the reading, the person who seeks knowledge is getting closer and closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Right. So this person is called the seeker. And you have certain terminology among certain circles, and this is very common amongst the Sufi circles, where they use the term the salik, the seeker. What is he seeking?
Allah.
He's seeking Allah. Very, very simply. Is there anyone who does not try to seek Allah? Maybe.
I mean, yeah, like disbelievers probably, right?
All right, but disbelievers, like these individuals aren't seeking Allah, because the thing is, even the disbeliever, and you have some of the fuqaha who talk about this, and from the Malikiya specifically, who, like I think Qadi Iyad mentions it. He said the one who seeks, even if he is non-Muslim, right? Ijtahad, and he tried. Maybe this person will have a standing in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But as for us, as for the Muslim, what is upon him? To constantly strive and to constantly seek. And the way that he seeks is how?
Through the footstep of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
By following the Quran and the Sunnah. By following the way of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this is something that's really important. This is something that's really fundamental. And striving to be the salik, striving to be a seeker, is something that is very fundamental of the journey to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Is there a fixed way to do this? Is there a prescribed way for an individual to do this? I'm sorry?
Salah
is part of it, right? So the question becomes, now all of us we all share 5 pillars, yes?
Yes.
Naam.
Right, we share 5 pillars. Outside of those 5 pillars, how do I decide on what deeds I need to do to draw near to Allah?
Nawafil.
Taib, how do I choose which nafila is good for me? Ya Uthman.
It differs, but there's something, there's the Sufis they call mujarrabat.
Okay.
Something that has been, tried on, Imam Farhan tried it, it worked for him. He passed it to Uthman, it worked for him. He passed to his son, it worked for them. And
this eventually transforms and it becomes what?
Tariqah.
This becomes a tariqah, honestly. This actually transforms and becomes a tariqah. But that initial thing that you talked about, the tajriba that you talked about, the tariqah of the salik is very individual. And this is something that is really important to always keep in mind. That every single one of us is going to be inclined to particular deeds. And this is something that's very natural. Why is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us a buffet of deeds? Why? Why give such variety? And why do we find so many people doing so many different things?
Everyone's looking for a path.
Mumtaz. Right. Everybody's looking for a path. And not just that, everybody's path is going to be
different. The frequency is different.
Well, it's going to be individual. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed certain people with bikathrat al-adhkar, that they're constantly making dhikr. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed certain people in their constant reading of the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed certain people in their long prayers. Allah has blessed certain people in their constant fasting. And how do I know? How do I know as an individual that this deed is the one that is right for me? And this is the one I should focus on, or these 3 or 4 are the ones I should focus on?
You have to test them out, figure it out.
Ahsant. Right. And this goes exactly back to what Uthman is talking about. I think the nice thing about the tariqas is that basically they're coming and saying that, okay, hey, these are the tested methods that we used, and this is what worked for us to draw near to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to get through those stages. I would challenge that and say, okay, that's good. And that might work for a set of people, but I want to go back to the root of how they were doing it. And that is just trying different deeds and seeing what it is that brings fulfillment to my heart. Because at the end of the day, the journey, and this is something that I really feel like we really need to drive home, is that the journey of the salik is always going to be individual. Can I have a shared experience with someone else?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't see why not. Is it possible that there's, you know, another brother or sisters or group of people who share, you know, a commonality, or they enjoy doing certain things socially? Yeah, absolutely. I have no issue with that. I have no problem with that. But the reality is that the journey to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always going to be individual. And that is why we're able to cater all of these deeds to us individually. And the only way to determine what deeds work best for each of us is through testing, right? Testing and experimentation. And a person might ask, well, you know, I don't have a lot of time. Well, following a tariqah is fine. I honestly don't have issue with it. They say, okay, you know, I'd rather go with something that's tried and tested. I don't have time to, you know, to go through, and I don't have time to discover. And this is why you kind of have that push and pull between people. Like, so now you have a number of teachers, a number of mashayikh who are like, okay, listen, I'm not with the tariqah. And some of them will be like, hey, this is something that's tried and tested. Why are you turning it away? And honestly, I don't have a problem with either. I think both of these are very reasonable, because at the end of the day, the journey of the salik is always going to be individual. And what works for me might not work for you, and what works for you might not work for me. And I wallahi, I really enjoy, you know, how Ghazali, he really presents this, and he doesn't talk about it in a group setting. He's talking to us, right? He's addressing this to the individual. This book is not meant to be, you know, okay, hey, as a group, this is what you need to do. No, he's saying this is what you as an individual need to do to purify your heart and to draw near to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I really, wallahi, I really appreciate, you know, the way that he words these things and the ways that he talks about them. And he talks about the levels, right? He talks about the levels of knowledge, saying, he talks about the prophets, he talks about the angels, and he talks about the animals. What I find really interesting is that he never, no matter how hard we try, he says that you can never reach, he says the highest you can reach is the knowledge of who, or the level of who?
The Malakani angels.
Of the angels. He never says that the highest level you can reach is that of a prophet. Why is that?
Because of the final, that is chosen by Allah Ta'ala.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. These individuals are chosen by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it is impossible to reach that level. You know what I mean? It's like you can keep working, and you can take that escalator, and at the top of the escalator is an elevator. And you know who that elevator is for? That's for the Anbiya, right? That's for the prophets. You can only get so high. You can only get so high in knowing Allah and drawing near to Him and loving Him, Azza wa Jal. But there comes a point where you say, okay, this is it. This is the final stop. After that, this is for the prophets. So I found it interesting the way that he presents this. And subhanAllah, the opposite of that, who does he liken them to? The one who doesn't take this path at all. He's like what?
Haywan.
Well, he's just like a haywan. He's just like an animal. He's just, and the word haywan, even in the Arabic language, it's really interesting, the use, and it's just describing something that is living, right? Is a hay. And it has no purpose other than to live. That's it, right? Its purpose is just to live and to do everything to preserve that living. Versus insan, right? Versus mankind, right? That's not why we were created. That's not why we were put on this earth.
I think at one point he likened it to a plant.
Subhanallah. Well, and I mean, and like the examples, man, this is really beautiful. You're just living, right? You're just in the ground. You're just growing. That's because what is the purpose of a plant other than to grow?
it actually has benefits, some plants.
No, in some plants they do benefit, you know what I mean? Like they benefit us or they'll benefit others and things. But at the end of the day, it's just the purpose is to just grow and to reproduce, right? Even the fruits that come from the plants, what is the ultimate purpose of those fruits? To attract animals to come and take the fruit and plant the seed somewhere else. But as for mankind, we have there's a greater cause that we have, there's a greater good, there's something greater that we are seeking, and that is nearness to him, Azza wa Jal. So I think we're close to the end time here, and I discussed everything that I wanted to talk about. I guess we can open up the floor a little bit for questions, inshallah. Wallahu a'lam wa sallallahu ala khayri khalqin nabiyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Floor is open for any questions or anyone who has any.
So Sheikh, at the beginning we talked about reason and mantiq, right?
Yeah.
And so you see a lot of people who are, you know, ahlul tasawwuf,
Mm-hmm.
they had both grounding, right?
Yeah.
So like Al-Ghazali camp will say, you know, mantiq is fine.
Yes.
You have the camp of Imam al-Nawawi or Ibn Taymiyyah where they say mantiq is haram.
Yes.
So in our day-to-day, so what is mantiq really necessary for us to study, or what is the ruling for it?
So I think mantiq is good for the person who wants to further his understanding of how to draw conclusions and how to reason. For the day-to-day Muslim, I don't think these type of things are necessary, or the one who's interested, right? Like I would never prevent anybody from studying any science. I think if anybody has an interest in a science, they should go and seek that and they should go and study it. And if you, it's just like grammar, right? Who is grammar essentially good for? It's somebody who has a good grasp of the language. So if you enjoy debating, if you enjoy discussions, you enjoy kind of, you know, creating mental models and these type of things, I think mantiq is very important for those people because it'll help them refine a skill that they're already good at. I think Ibn Taymiyyah has a very famous statement, right? He says, "Mantiq la yafhamu al-balid wa la yantafa' minhu al-dhaki," or something like this.
Yes, exactly.
Right? He says that the balid, you know, he said that the person who, like the weak-minded person, he's not going to benefit from it. And he said, as for the intelligent person, it's already something that that is natural for him.
Need it.
Right? He doesn't need it. And which is interesting because he himself studied it.
And he refuted Radd
Right?
again.
And the thing is, it's not meant to be a refutation of like mantiq as a science in and of itself. It's meant to be a refutation of the people who draw incorrect conclusions from that. Because even if you look a lot of his books, he will always, his books, when he talks about, like, you know, for example, his Risala Tadmuriyah, it's a very logical arguments that he's trying to create and that he's trying to base. And it's very clear. You can see that he's bringing, you know, point A, he's point B, and then conclusion. Right, and these are called, even in Arabic, you're called muqaddimat and nata'ij. So he's following a very logical way of presenting arguments, showing that he himself is very aware of it. So, you know, and I think it's good. I think it's something that, you know, for some people, I think they really, it'll help them kind of hone their thoughts and it'll help them organize how to draw conclusions. Some people, they honestly won't need it because they have a natural sense of reason. And for others, they might be interested in it. And I have no issue studying it. What's interesting about Ghazali himself is in his Mustasfa, right? He has a book on legal thought. The first chapter is about mantiq. And he says that, you know, he's like, you know, you really don't need it. And if you want to skip over the section, go ahead. So I really thought that was interesting.
But yeah, that's really important. But I think personally, for people who have admiration and love for Ibn Taymiyyah,
yeah,
I don't think you will understand his larger works, especially Dar al-Ta'arud, if you don't have no grounding in falsafa and mantiq.
No, obviously, because that's who he's addressing, right?
Exactly.
So there are certain things, and we have to understand a lot of the early works, it was very much framed in Hellenistic thought. It was very much framed in old Greek thought. So if you don't understand those sciences, you're not even going to understand what it is that he's refuting and what it is that he's talking about. And any other comments, questions?
I thought it was also interesting. So you mentioned how there's a ceiling, right, as the angels in
Mhm.
terms of knowledge. But he also said he quoted, I don't know if it's like a hadith or something, but about our heart being a vessel,
Yeah,
and that you know we can't fill it with knowledge or anything that draws us near to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if it's already filled with other things.
subhanallah. Well,
Um,
that's jazakallah khair, man. That's really beautiful.
so that was a very good point.
And when he's talking about other things, what is he really talking about?
The dunya, maybe.
So dunya, I think that's an interesting kind of side topic. Is it okay for me to love the dunya?
No.
Yes, within bounds.
Okay, what are those bounds?
Mm.
If it pulls you, if it helps you to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
What if it doesn't help me and it doesn't hurt me?
Well, if it doesn't hurt you, that means it's not distracting you either. I was gonna say,
Like, what if I get
if it doesn't help you, then it distracts you. I think, doesn't it? But I don't know.
okay, wait, even distraction? I think it's really important to kind of put this in perspective. Loving the dunya is something that's very natural. Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Truly, no.
Right? Nobody, you can have people claim like, oh, I don't care about the dunya, I don't care about money. I would say that those people are lying. Even the Prophet ﷺ, he himself, he says, "Hubbiba ilayya min dunyakum," right? So he's even putting it off. You know what I mean? He's trying to show that it has been made beloved to me from your worldly things, right? He's distancing himself, but even he's saying that these things have been made beloved to me, and he said al-tibun nisa, right? He said nice smells and women. So there are things in this world that he himself admits to enjoying. So what about us? And there are so many hadith, right? The Prophet said if you gave the son of Adam 2 plots of land, he would ask for a third. You have other hadith that's saying that the only thing that fills the stomach of Ibn Adam is, you guys know the hadith?
Dirt.
Is dirt, right? Like he wants to keep consuming, and he will keep consuming. The only thing that will satisfy his hunger is death.
Mm.
So I mean, all these things, it's very natural. But the question comes in now, like, okay, what is the boundary of that? At what point does my love of worldly things become haram?
Once you start violating Allah's rights and the rights of others.
Ahsant, mumtaz. That's a perfect summary. And meaning that if I'm indulging in something, but I'm still taking breaks for prayer, right? And my family is being taken care of. Jais, labas. Is it the best use of my time? Absolutely not. But at the end of the day, it's very difficult for us to dictate and tell others how to use their time and how not to use their time. And this goes back to another point where the journey of the individual, remember, the journey of the individual is the journey of the individual, right? I don't dictate to other people how to take their journey. And this is something that many of us have fallen into, where we just police others. And we're always looking at what other people are doing. At any point, up until the reading now, do you find Ghazali telling us on how to look at other people?
No.
Absolutely not. Right? This entire section, and he'll continue doing this, it's a complete internal, introspection. He keeps telling us to look at ourselves, look at yourself, look at your heart, look at what you're doing, look at your actions. He's not telling, he's like, go look at his actions or go look at her actions. And even the examples he give is just meant to be examples to show us on how to better ourselves. So I think we really need to remove this concept of trying to police others. I remember a brother coming into my office one time. He's like, Sheikh, man, there's this brother, he was praying next to me. And he said, when you came up from sajda, he was still in sajda. And when you went back into sajda, then he came up and he went down. He's like, what about his prayer? He's like, what should I say to him? I was like, nothing, akhi. Focus on your prayer, man. And this is a sickness that unfortunately has just come, and it's pervasive. Really, it's pervasive to the ummah. And that we've stopped focusing on ourselves and we started focusing on others. SubhanAllah. I remember a brother asked me one time, he was talking about even financially, and I was like, it's amazing how us as a ummah, we've flipped the perspective of two very important things. I said financially, when we should be looking at helping the community, we're only looking to help ourselves. And I said spiritually, when we're supposed to help ourselves and focus on ourselves, we're busy looking at others. And it's just amazing how these perspectives have switched. Because someone might say, okay, well, if you're looking to help the community, how are you going to help yourself? Like, you're not a part of the community, right? Like we're all members of the community, and if we uplift the community, like, you know, we are part of the community. We'll also uplift ourselves. And then spiritually, we've just have this outward look, and as soon as you turn that spirituality outward, all it is arrogance. That's it. It's nothing else. This is not the way the Prophet ﷺ dealt with his companions. This is not the way that we should be dealing with each other. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us. So with that, I guess that's all the comments that I wanted to make. If we have any other questions, you guys, always, you're welcome to share them in the chat. We got a few minutes now. If you guys have any last minute questions, inshallah, otherwise we're going to close up.
Are we reading chapter 5?
Yeah, chapter 5 for next week, inshallah.
Okay, Jazakallah khair.
At least chapter 5. I'll take a look. I might add chapter 6. I'm not sure.
Sheikh, about turuq.
Yes.
Nowadays, I think people have to be very. And personally, I'll be honest with you. And I was raised from a tasawwuf perspective.
Yeah.
And the madaris and the mashayikh that I studied with are, mutasawwifin.
Yes.
But as an insider, there's no one who criticizes tasawwuf more than Imam al-Ghazali.
Yes.
Right.
I agree 100%.
And nowadays there's a lot of charlatans.
Yes.
I can pose to be I just need a jubba and shawl and I'll be a sheikh.
Yeah.
And I think it should be the tasawwuf.
How do you think I got
you're teaching?
I said, how do you think I got this job?
يا حبيبي والله انت شيخي على عيني وراسي يا شيخنا. But نعم والله, this is the real tasawwuf. This is the real suluk. It's not about to be honest with you, the Sufi Salaf thing has become a cult.
Well, subhanallah.
The Sufis don't do nothing. It's just come for dhikr, but the dhikr is maybe I want to see a sister, or I want to come to waste time and go home. And the other side,
if she's bringing you closer to Allah, what's the problem?
Allahu Akbar.
And I'm good, and I graduated from that, alhamdulillah, and I'm taken. Unless we say mathna.
No, I mean, for me, I agree with you 100%. And this is one of the problems that I have with the modern tariqas, is that I feel it's very cultish sometimes. And this is what scares me about them. But you have to understand, all of the groups that we have in the Muslim world today, one of the main reasons that people ascribe to them is usually not for spiritual or religious reasons. It's usually for social reasons. Because they're looking for a group to accept them. And when you get into a tariqa, or whether you get into the Salafis or into the Azharis, or into the Qarawiyyin, it makes you feel socially accepted and you feel like you're part of a group. One of the big things that bothers me in Ghazali, I don't think he talks about it here. I think he talks about it in his Munqidh. He actually complains about how the clergy are dressed.
Yes.
And he talks about, like, they have this dress and they're followed by this entourage. And if you think about it, he's complaining about the same cultish tendencies. And this is the same thing that we're complaining about today. It's just that, you have these huge personalities and they just rise up so quickly through the ranks, and then people just follow them like crazy. And this is the reason Ghazali left, right? This is why he left the Madrasa Nizamiyya. He just saw all this culture stuff and he's like, no, this can't be right. And he left, and that's why he wrote even the title of his book, Ihya Ulum ad-Din, that he wants to revive the Islamic sciences. And he was 5th century. Like, you're not talking about like, last year. You're talking about 5th century. And at that time, he's talking about reviving these sciences, talking about the heart and the soul and the spirit is completely gone. And wallahi, we find the same thing today. So I'm sorry, Zishan, forgive my rant. you raised your hand.
I think Zishan's not able to speak. He might be muted.
Khalas, I'm sorry. Oh, here we go. There you go. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I didn't raise my hand. I'm good. I'm listening.
Oh, okay. Khalas. I know. I saw your hand raised, and
Thanks.
that was it. I thought you were going to jump on me and be like, "No, we have to join a tariqah. What's wrong with you?"
No.
It's like, stop misguiding the people. But wallahi, I mean, listen, the tariqas are based on exactly what Uthman had mentioned. These mashayikh themselves, they were trying different ways in order to draw near to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Somebody saw them, somebody recorded it, and they said, hey, it worked for him. There's a good chance that it can work for us too, and it possibly can. Where did all these wird awrad come from? You know what I mean? Like having a wird is something very prophetic. This is something that you find with the companions, that they would have a certain amount that they would read every day. They would have a certain amount that they would recite every day, because the reality is Islam leads to consistency, right? It's not meant to be random. That, and I, subhanAllah, meant, like, I've heard certain mashayikh and like certain students of knowledge claim like your adhkar have to be random. Like you can't have a schedule for them.
Just make it up.
Yeah, just you have to. If you do like istighfar on a Tuesday at 3 to 3:15, it can't be every Tuesday. It has to be a different time. It has to be a different thing. And I'm just sitting there. I was like, what kind of idiocy is this? Islam leads to consistency. It brings consistency, and it anchors our lives. And in that I mean, if that was the case, why is it that Hajj is the same time every year? Why is it that Ramadan is the same time every year? Why is it that we make 5 daily prayers in the same windows every single day? Yeah, Islam is meant to bring consistency to all of our lives. And the only thing that takes us away from that consistency is when we step away from those obligations. So inshallah, like I said, forgive my rants. I have no beef against the tariqa people or the anti-tariqa people. Like you do you, yo. You know what I mean? I think everybody needs to do what draws them near to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just make sure that whatever path that we take as individuals, that is a sincere path. And many times we have to make sure that we're being honest with ourselves. And really questioning ourselves on why is it that I'm choosing this way, or why is it that I'm choosing that way? Because even the most important characteristics of everything, everything you can think of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the two that will always come to mind are sidq wal amana, right? The fact that he was honest and the fact that he was trustworthy. And we really need to be honest with ourselves. This is what ikhlas is. This is what sincerity is. That we're able to ask ourselves if this is the correct path, and this is the way that am I truly doing this for Allah, or am I doing this because I don't have enough friends? And if I don't have enough friends, that's fine. That requires another set of exercises. But we shouldn't confuse those things, and we shouldn't confuse our intention. So I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us from those who are honest with ourselves, honest with others, and most importantly, honest with Him Azza wa Jal.
الله يرضى عليكم شيخ.
Ameen. Khalas, I'll see you guys next week. Inshallah, the link is in the WhatsApp group. If anybody needs it, you guys can always private message me or any of the other brothers in the group, inshallah, and they'll give you the YouTube page so you can catch up on the old lectures, and they can give you the readings that we are using in the class. Jazakumullah khair.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Assalamu alaikum.